An 11-year-old boy walks onto a court in the Bronx and begins doing the unthinkable. He dribbles, feints, and dominates grown men as if he were a professional. Within minutes, everyone stops to watch, and among them, none other than Steph Curry. What made the biggest name in the NBA stop everything because of this unknown boy? You're about to find out. The summer sun in the Bronx punished the cracked asphalt of the court at Millbrook houses. The thermometer read 92 degrees Fahrenheit, but for Marcus Johnson, that temperature was just an insignificant detail. At just 11 years old, his thin, agile body moved around the court as if he had been born for this. He dribbled the worn orange ball with a dexterity that didn't match his age, while sweat ran down his forehead, fogging up the black-framed glasses that stubbornly kept sliding down his nose. "Marcus, it's past 6. Tanya Johnson's familiar voice echoed across the court. Standing by the rusty fence surrounding the place, she held 2 grocery bags, the blue uniform from the hospital where she worked as a nursing assistant still visible under her thin jacket. "Just 5 more minutes, Mom," Marcus begged, executing another perfect shot from the three-point line. The ball cut through the air in a precise arc before silently sliding through the worn net. Tanya sighed, but her eyes sparkled with pride as she watched her son. 8 years had passed since Marcus's father had abandoned them, leaving her to raise a 3-year-old boy alone. 8 years of 2 jobs, late bills, and constant sacrifices. But seeing Marcus on the court, completely absorbed in his element, made everything worthwhile. "5 minutes, kid. Not a second more. I have to be on the night shift in 1 hour," she conceded, putting the bags on the ground. Marcus nodded affirmatively while continuing his shots. The Millbrook court had been his second home since he was 6 years old, when one of the neighbors had given him a used basketball. Since then, every free minute was dedicated to perfecting his game. While other neighborhood children fell into the temptations of the streets, Marcus found refuge in the faded lines of the public court. The small apartment he shared with his mother on the 3rd floor of the housing project had only one luxury: internet good enough for Marcus to endlessly watch videos of Steph Curry. The Golden State Warriors star was more than an idol for the boy. He was a role model, an inspiration, a dream incarnate. Marcus studied Curry's every move, every shot, every dribble, and then went out to reproduce them on the court, hour after hour, day after day. "Hey, Squirt, get off the court. It's time for the adults now." The deep voice of Dion, a man of almost 6 feet 7 inches with broad shoulders, cut through Marcus's concentration. Behind him, 6 other men entered the court, all much larger than the skinny boy. "I'm leaving now," mumbled Marcus, picking up his ball. "Always the same kid," laughed one of the men. "I bet he sleeps here." Marcus ignored the comments as he walked toward his mother. He was used to it. Nobody there took him seriously. He was just the skinny kid with glasses who never stopped practicing. "Damn, I forgot my knee brace," complained one of the players when Marcus was almost off the court. "How do you forget your own knee brace, Eddie?" Dion mocked. "You can barely run without it." "I need to go back home to get it," Eddie said, frustrated. "Start without me." "No chance. We need an even number," retorted another player. "Without you, we're 7. Marcus stopped, holding his ball firmly against his chest. His heart raced when a bold idea came to his mind. He took a deep breath, gathering all the courage he possessed. I can play," he said, his voice betraying his nervousness. The silence that followed was quickly broken by thunderous laughter. "You're kidding, right?" Dion shook his head. "Kid, this is a man's game. Come back in 10 years." Tanya approached the fence, concerned about the interaction. "Marcus, let's go home," she called, apprehensive. But something about that day was different. Maybe it was the heat, or maybe it was the Curry video Marcus had watched that morning, where the star talked about never letting anyone tell you that you can't do something. With a confidence he didn't even know he possessed, Marcus stepped forward. "Just one game," he insisted, his voice firmer. "If I'm not good enough, I'll leave." The men looked at each other, mixing amusement and disbelief. "Let the kid play one," suggested one of them. "It'll be funny." Dion looked Marcus up and down, as if assessing an unlikely opponent. "One game," he finally decided, "and when you break something, don't come crying." Tanya opened her mouth to protest, but something in her son's determined look stopped her. She knew that look, the same one she had when facing life's adversities. With a resigned sigh, she nodded slightly to Marcus. "Leave your glasses and your ball here," she said, extending her hand through the fence. "And be careful." The players divided into teams, with Marcus being chosen last, a reluctant courtesy from Dion's team. The rules were simple. First team to score 21 points wins. Marcus took a deep breath, adjusting the oversized t-shirt he wore, a gift from a community program in the neighborhood. The game began, and, as expected, nobody passed the ball to Marcus. He ran from one side to the other, strategically positioning himself, but it was as if he were invisible. His team was losing 10-6 when the ball finally bounced in his direction after a missed shot. It was as if time slowed down. Years of solitary practice, thousands of hours watching Steph Curry, hundreds of mornings waking up before school to train. Everything converged in that moment. Marcus caught the ball, felt its familiar weight in his hands, and in a fluid motion, dribbled between two stunned defenders, executing a factual move he had practiced countless times. The court went silent. Even Tanya held her breath as she watched her small son confidently advance against men twice his size. With a perfect crossover, Marcus left his defender behind and shot. The ball spun in the air and went through the net without touching the rim. 3 points. Score 10-9. For a moment, nobody moved. It was as if that scene, an 11-year-old boy executing an NBA-worthy move on a deteriorated Bronx court, was too incomprehensible to process. "Beginner's luck," someone mumbled, breaking the trance. The game resumed, but something had changed. The looks directed at Marcus were no longer condescending, but cautious. When his team regained possession of the ball, for the first time, one of the adults actually passed to Marcus. What followed immediately entered the folklore of the Millbrook court. The skinny 11-year-old kid moved like water, finding spaces where none seemed to exist, anticipating plays as if he could predict the future. His shots, precise as a Swiss watch, rarely missed the target. The sun was beginning to set when Marcus made the last point, ending the game 21-17. The silence that followed was more eloquent than any applause. Dion, the same one who minutes before had laughed at the idea of playing with a boy, looked at Marcus with a mixture of amazement and respect. "Who are you, kid?" he finally asked, extending his hand for a shake. Marcus smiled shyly as he wiped the sweat from his forehead. "I'm just a kid who loves basketball," he answered, accepting the handshake. What none of them noticed, however, was the man standing across the street, leaning against a dark car, who had watched the entire scene. Rob Collins, coach at the Riverside Basketball Academy in Harlem, put his phone in his pocket after filming the last minutes of that extraordinary display. "Unbelievable," he muttered to himself as he watched Marcus run to hug his mother. The shaky, Video recorded on Rob Collins's phone already had more than 10,000 views when he parked his 2015 Honda Civic in front of Millbrook houses the next afternoon. The 3-minute recording showed only the end of the game, but it was enough to capture the magic of what had happened on the court. The title simply said, "The next Curry is 11 years old and plays in the Bronx." Rob adjusted his Knicks cap and walked to the court, feeling like a talent scout in search of a hidden treasure. At 42 years old, he had seen his own career as a player end after a knee injury in college. Since then, he had dedicated his life to training young talents at Riverside Academy, one of the few institutions in Harlem that offered scholarships to children from underprivileged communities. The court was almost empty when he arrived, except for a solitary figure he immediately recognized. Marcus Johnson was executing methodical shots from the free throw line, completely absorbed in his routine. Rob observed for almost 10 minutes, analyzing each movement, each detail of the technique the boy had clearly developed on his own. Imperfect in some aspects, but impressively effective. "Your elbow is a little open on the shot," Rob finally commented, approaching. Marcus startled, almost losing control of the ball. His eyes, behind his glasses, widened as he recognized the Riverside Academy uniform Rob wore. "Who are you?" he asked, his voice mixing surprise and caution, a natural precaution for any child raised on the streets of the Bronx. "Rob Collins," he introduced himself, extending his hand. "I'm a coach at Riverside Academy in Harlem." Marcus shook the man's hand hesitantly, his mind processing the implications of that visit. "How did you know about me?" Rob smiled, taking the phone from his pocket. "You caused a little sensation yesterday," he explained, showing the video to Marcus. "I was passing by when I saw you play against those guys. I've never seen anything like it in someone your age." Marcus's face alternated between surprise, pride, and embarrassment as he watched himself on the screen. It was strange to see himself from the outside, executing movements that for him were just the result of years of stubborn practice. "You filmed this?" he asked, returning the phone. "Yes, and now I want to make a proposal." Rob got straight to the point. Riverside Academy has a program for young talents, professional training, technical development, complete sports education. I'm offering you a spot. Full scholarship. Marcus held the ball more tightly against his chest, as if it were a shield. "I don't know if my mom can afford something like that." "You don't understand," Rob gently interrupted. "Full scholarship means you don't pay anything. No tuition, no equipment, no uniforms, nothing." Marcus's eyes widened even more. "Why? Why would you do this?" The question, in its childish simplicity, carried the weight of distrust cultivated in a life where few things came without a hidden price. Rob recognized that look. It was the same one he saw in many talented young people from underprivileged neighborhoods, for whom distrust was a survival tool. "Because talents like yours appear once a decade," he answered honestly. "And because I believe that with the right training, you can reach places you can't even imagine." Before Marcus could respond, a familiar voice interrupted the conversation. "Marcus? Who is this man?" Tanya Johnson was approaching quickly, her face expressing a mixture of concern and instinctive protection. She had left work early at the hospital and decided to pass by the court before going to her second job at a diner. "Mom, this is Mr. Collins," Marcus explained hastily. "He's a coach at a basketball academy." Rob extended his hand politely. "Rob Collins, from Riverside Academy. Pleasure to meet you, Mrs. Johnson." Tanya shook his hand firmly, but her look remained cautious. And what brings a Riverside coach to the Bronx? Rob briefly explained about the video and the scholarship proposal, showing the recording to Tanya. As she watched her son playing, her expression softened, eyes welling with pride. "I always knew he was special," she said softly, more to herself than to Rob. Then, composing herself, "But I don't understand. Don't these scholarships usually come with some kind of catch?" "No catch," Rob assured. "The Academy has sponsors who fund young talents. The only commitment is to discipline and studies, maintaining good grades at school, and commitment to training. The scholarship continues." Tanya looked at her son, who could barely contain his anticipation. "We need to talk about this at home, Marcus," she said, although her tone was no longer one of rejection. Rob took a card from his pocket. "Here. My contact information is here. And this," he handed another card, "is the contact for the Academy's administrative director. You can call and verify everything. Ask other parents about the program. Take all the time you need to decide." As they walked home, Marcus held the cards as if they were golden tickets from Willy Wonka. In their small apartment, while Tanya prepared a quick sandwich before leaving for the night shift, they discussed the proposal. "It's an incredible opportunity, Mom," Marcus argued, barely touching his sandwich. "I know, honey," Tanya sighed, checking the clock. "But these things are rarely as simple as they seem. Harlem is almost an hour from here. How would you go back and forth every day?" "They have transportation," Marcus promptly responded, citing information from the Academy's website that he had already researched on his old cell phone. "And the program includes academic supervision after training." Tanya smiled at how quickly her son had done his research. Even at just 11 years old, Marcus had always shown a maturity beyond his years. A consequence, perhaps, of growing up watching the daily effort of a single mother. "And what if it doesn't work out? If it's not what we expect?" "Then I'll go back to training here," he answered simply. "But Mom, what if it does work out?" That question hung between them, loaded with possibilities that neither dared to fully name. Tanya looked at her son, at his hopeful eyes behind the glasses, at the way his fingers nervously drummed on the table, and knew she had no right to prevent that dream. 3 days later, after extensively verifying the Academy and talking with parents of other scholarship students, Tanya took Marcus for his first day at Riverside. The contrast with the deteriorated Millbrook court couldn't be greater. The polished gym, the new backboards, the official balls carefully organized. "Welcome to Riverside, Marcus," said Rob, handing him a uniform with the number 30, the same as Steph Curry's. "Ready to start?" The first days were a culture shock for Marcus. Most of the boys came from middle or upper-class families, with parents who could pay the full tuition. Their sneakers were always new, their training uniforms personalized, their backpacks expensive brands. Marcus, with his glasses mended with adhesive tape and second-hand sneakers that Rob discreetly replaced with a new pair, felt like a fish out of water. "Hey, Bronx, catch this!" The ball thrown with excessive force by Tyler Matthews, son of a Wall Street executive, hit Marcus in the stomach, knocking him to the floor. Muffled laughter echoed through the gym as he got up, adjusting his glasses. "Sorry," said Tyler without any sincerity. "I thought you were faster, since you're so good that you got a full scholarship." Marcus swallowed the humiliation in silence. It wasn't the first time he had faced taunts, and he doubted it would be the last. He focused on picking up the ball and continuing his dribbling exercise. "Don't mind him." The voice came from Jamal Washington, another scholarship recipient who had been training there for 2 years. Tall for his 12 years, with an easy smile that contrasted with the seriousness in his eyes, Jamal soon became Marcus's first and only friend at the academy. "Tyler picks on everyone who doesn't have Daddy buying their way," explained Jamal as they practiced shots together. "But Coach Rob doesn't care about that. Here all that matters is how good you are and how hard you work." And working hard was something Marcus knew how to do better than anyone. Each day, he absorbed new techniques like a sponge, perfecting movements that he previously executed by pure instinct. Rob frequently stayed after hours for extra training with him, correcting small details of his posture, teaching him to better read the game, to anticipate opponents' movements. One night, almost a month after Marcus started at the academy, Rob called Tanya for a conversation after practice. Marcus waited nervously outside the room, fearing something was wrong. "Your son is extraordinary," said Rob, showing Tanya videos of Marcus's progress. "In 30 days, he has assimilated techniques that most take years to master." "He's always been a quick learner," replied Tanya with evident pride. "It's more than that," Rob leaned forward. "It's a rare combination of natural talent, game intelligence, and work ethic. That's why I want your permission to register him for the National Youth Tournament that will take place in Oakland 3 months from now." Tanya blinked, assimilating the information. "Oakland? In California? Rob, we can barely pay the bills, let alone a trip to the other side of the country." "All expenses would be covered by the academy," Rob quickly clarified. "It's an important tournament, with scouts from all over the country. But more important than that," he paused, carefully choosing his words, "Steph Curry will be there." Tanya's eyes widened. "Marcus's idol?" Rob nodded. "Curry has a social project that sponsors part of the tournament, and he usually appears to watch some games. I can't promise he'll see Marcus play, but it would be his dream come true," completed Tanya, her voice almost a whisper. Meanwhile, in the corridor, Marcus was trying in vain to hear the conversation. His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of approaching footsteps. Well, Bronx, spying on the coach?" Tyler appeared with 2 friends, all already dressed to leave. "My dad said you scholarship kids are always worried about losing your little privilege." Marcus ignored the provocation, keeping his eyes fixed on the closed door. "I heard the coach Rob has been showing a video of yours around," continued Tyler, his tone now mixing envy and contempt. "Must be nice being his new charity project." Before Marcus could respond, the office door opened, and Rob appeared with Tanya. "Everything okay here, boys?" asked Rob, his perceptive gaze alternating between Marcus and Tyler. "Everything's great, Coach," replied Tyler with a forced smile, before walking away with his friends. "Marcus," called Rob, his face lighting up with a genuine smile, "we have news. Have you heard of the Oakland National Youth Tournament?" The Boeing 737 tore through the blue June sky over the American continent, traveling from New York to Oakland. For most passengers, it was just another domestic flight. For Marcus Johnson, it was a journey into the unknown. "We're more than 30,000 feet high," Marcus whispered to Jamal, who occupied the middle seat. In the aisle, Rob Collins reviewed some notes, occasionally casting reassuring glances at his 2 young athletes. "And at almost 500 miles per hour," added Jamal with a smile. "My second flight doesn't scare me as much as the first one." Marcus nodded, but his fingers tightly gripped the armrests. It wasn't just the flight that made him nervous. In 3 days, he would be playing in the biggest youth tournament in the country, against the best talents in his age bracket, and some years above, most of them training in academies since they were 5 or 6 years old, with access to resources he had only known for the last 3 months. What if I'm not good enough? The question escaped his lips before he could contain it. Jamal dramatically rolled his eyes. Man, you play better than guys 3 years older at the academy. Coach Rob wouldn't bring you if he didn't think you had a chance. But the best from the entire country will be there. And you're going to show them what a Bronx boy can do. Jamal responded with confidence, offering Marcus one of the earbuds from his iPod. Now relax and listen to some J. Cole with me. When they finally landed at Oakland International Airport, the California sun welcomed them with a different luminosity than New York's. Softer, almost golden. The hotel where they would stay wasn't luxurious, but to Marcus, the clean room with 2 twin beds seemed like a palace. "We don't have practice today," announced Rob after they had settled in. "Rest from the trip. Tomorrow, we'll do a light reconnaissance of the court, and then we have the day free for you to see a bit of the city." The next morning, Marcus could barely touch his breakfast. His stomach was in knots, and it wasn't just from anxiety about the tournament. Rob would take them to see the gym where they would play, the same gym where, by his calculations, Steph Curry might appear. The California Elite Sports Center was impressive. With a capacity for almost 5,000 people, the gym had been recently renovated with polished wooden courts that shone under the powerful lights. Right at the entrance, a huge banner announced 24th National Youth Tournament, sponsored by the Steph Curry Foundation for Young Athletes. "Wow," was all Marcus could say as he admired the space. "It's different from our court in Millbrook, huh?" joked Rob, placing his hand on the boy's shoulder. They had an hour for court recognition, along with other teams arriving from across the country. Marcus carefully observed the other players, evaluating their movements, trying to guess their strengths and weaknesses, a habit that Rob had encouraged as part of his tactical education. "That one there, number 23 in the blue shirt," he whispered to Jamal. "He always goes right after the between-the-legs dribble." Jamal nodded, impressed with the observation. "And the big guy in green only uses his left hand near the basket, even though he's right-handed." The reconnaissance ended too soon, for Marcus's liking, who could have stayed there all day analyzing his future opponents. Following Rob's plan, they spent the rest of the day seeing some Oakland sights, including a quick visit to Oracle Arena, home of the Golden State Warriors. "Maybe one day you'll play here," commented Rob, as they took photos in front of the stadium. Marcus smiled shyly, not wanting to feed a dream that seemed so distant. Still, he couldn't help but imagine what it would be like to step onto that court, wearing a professional uniform with thousands of people in the stands. At night, back at the hotel, the nervousness returned in full force. The games would start the next morning, and Marcus's first match would be against a team from Phoenix with players up to 13 years old, 2 years older than him. "Remember what I always say," Rob said during the small tactical meeting in the room. "Age is just a number on the court. What matters is intelligence, technique, and heart. And you have all 3. Marcus tried to sleep, but spent hours tossing in bed, while Jamal snored lightly in the bed next to him. At some point during the night, he took his cell phone and watched, for the 1,000th time, the video of Steph Curry talking about overcoming limitations and expectations. "Nobody believed I would get where I am," Curry said in the video. "They said I was too short, too skinny, that my shot was unconventional. But working hard when nobody is watching is what separates the good from the great." Those words lulled Marcus into a restless sleep, until he was awakened by the alarm at 6:30 in the morning. The first game was scheduled for 9 o'clock. As he warmed up on the side of the court, Marcus felt his heart hammering against his chest. The gym already had a small crowd, mainly relatives of the players and some scouts from more advanced youth programs. His eyes nervously scanned the stands, searching, even though he knew it was unlikely, for Steph Curry's familiar face. "Focus on the game," Rob called him back to reality. "One step at a time." The opponent was exactly as expected. Boys who were bigger, stronger, and with more experience in tournaments. In the first few minutes, Marcus seemed shy, almost intimidated by the environment and the importance of the moment. A missed shot, an intercepted pass, a lost dribble. Each mistake seemed to confirm his worst fears. "Time out!" shouted Rob when the difference reached 12 points in the first quarter. In the key, small meeting at courtside, the coach showed no disappointment, only calm determination. "Marcus, what are you doing?" "Trying to play, coach," the boy replied, breathless. "No, you're trying not to make mistakes. And those are different things," corrected Rob. "You didn't come all this way to be cautious. Play your game. Be yourself." Those simple words caused an almost instant change. When the game resumed, it was as if another player had entered the court wearing Marcus's number 30. The boy from the Bronx began to show the talent that had brought him there. The precise dribbles, the creative passes, the accurate shots that seemed to defy physics. The audience, initially divided, began to notice. Murmurs spread through the stands each time Marcus executed a particularly impressive move. "How old is he?" was the question many asked as they watched the small number 30 on the court. At the beginning of the third quarter, with the score tied at 45-45, something unusual happened in the stands. Steph Curry, accompanied by 2 security guards and an assistant, discreetly entered the gym. He had planned to quickly stop by to see the son of Del Henderson, a longtime friend and former NBA player whose son would play later that day. Curry sat in a discreet spot near the exit, with a cap pulled over his eyes to not draw too much attention. His plan was to watch for a few minutes and then move on to other commitments. However, his attention was immediately captured by a play on the court. A small, skinny boy with glasses executing a between-the-legs dribble followed by a long-distance shot that went in perfectly. "Who is that kid?" Curry asked his assistant, leaning forward in his seat, suddenly interested. The assistant quickly consulted the tournament program. "Marcus Johnson, 11 years old, from New York." 11? Curry repeated, incredulous, watching Marcus steal the ball from a much larger opponent and initiate a perfect counterattack. "Are you sure?" Meanwhile, completely unaware of his idol's presence, Marcus was in a state of total flow. The world around had disappeared. The stands, the noise, the pressure, everything was reduced to the rhythm of the game, the sensation of the ball in his hands, the instinctive reading of the opposing defense's movements. With 3 minutes left in the game and his team down by 2 points, Marcus faced the most challenging moment of the match. His body was beginning to feel the fatigue, and the opponents, realizing his importance in the game, redoubled their marking on him. "Triple defense on the shorty!" shouted the opposing coach. And suddenly, Marcus found himself surrounded by 3 much larger players every time he received the ball. It was at this moment that Curry, now completely involved in the game, saw something familiar, something he himself had experienced countless times in his career. The smallest player on the court, underestimated for his size, using intelligence and technique to overcome physical limitations. Marcus, pressured like never before, resorted to what he had learned from watching videos of his idol for years. In a crucial moment, with 20 seconds on the clock and a 1-point difference, he executed a move he had seen Curry do hundreds of times: the split of the double defense, moving quickly between 2 defenders like water flowing between rocks. The movement opened space for a shot from the three-point line. The entire gym seemed to hold its breath as the ball described a perfect arc in the air. Curry instinctively stood up, as if watching a reflection of himself years ago. The ball lightly touched the rim, spun, threatened to go out, and fell in. When the final buzzer sounded, the New York team had won 72-70, with Marcus scoring an incredible 28 points. His teammates ran to hug him, lifting him on their shoulders as the small gym gave him a standing ovation for the extraordinary performance. Steph. Curry remained in his place, now standing like the rest of the audience, with a broad smile on his face. He had discreetly canceled his next appointment by phone a few minutes earlier. "I'm going to stay a bit longer," he informed his assistant, without taking his eyes off Marcus. "I want to meet this kid." On the way out of the court, as he followed Rob and Jamal to the locker room, Marcus was still in ecstasy with the victory and his performance. The coach smiled proudly, knowing his pupil had demonstrated his full potential when it mattered most. "Marcus," called Rob when they were almost at the locker room, "there's someone who wants to meet you." When the boy turned around, his world seemed to freeze. There, less than 10 feet away, was Steph Curry in person, smiling and walking toward him. Time stopped for Marcus Johnson at that moment. The noise of the gym disappeared. The people around became indistinct blurs, and the only thing his mind could process was the figure of Steph Curry, in flesh and blood, standing in front of him, extending his hand to greet him. "Marcus, right? Amazing game, man," said Curry with a genuine smile. Marcus stood paralyzed, looking at his idol as if seeing a ghost. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Beside him, Jamal discreetly nudged him in the ribs, bringing him back to reality. Yes, that's me. Thank you, Mr. Curry," Marcus finally managed to stammer, shaking the extended hand with trembling fingers. I'm your biggest fan." Curry laughed, a warm and unpretentious sound that immediately put Marcus more at ease. "I could see that from your game," he replied. "That split of the double team at the end? I could have sworn I was watching myself play." Marcus blushed intensely, adjusting his glasses that were sliding down his sweaty nose. "I learned by watching your videos, like thousands of times." Rob Collins observed the scene with a contained smile, exchanging a knowing look with Curry's assistant, who had been previously contacted after Rob sent Marcus's video to various contacts in the basketball world. "How about we talk for a bit?" suggested Curry, indicating a quieter area near the now almost empty stands. "I have an hour free before my next commitment." Marcus's eyes widened as if he had just won the lottery. "That would be incredible," he managed to say. "Great," Curry turned to Rob. "Is that okay with you, Coach?" "Of course," agreed Rob. "Jamal and I will wait in the locker room, Marcus." "No, rush." As they walked to a quiet corner of the gym, Marcus felt as if he were floating. Steph Curry himself, had watched his game and wanted to talk to him. It was too surreal to process. They sat in empty chairs in the first row of the stands. For a few moments, there was an awkward silence, until Curry broke it with a simple question. "So, when did you start playing basketball?" The familiar question helped Marcus relax, and soon he found himself telling the story of how he got his first ball at 6 years old, the endless hours practicing alone on the deteriorated Millbrook court, the mother who worked 2 jobs to support him, and how watching Curry's videos had become his main basketball school. "We didn't have money for lessons or academies," explained Marcus, now speaking with more confidence. "So, I would watch your videos and try to copy everything on the neighborhood court." Curry listened attentively, occasionally nodding in understanding. There was something in Marcus's story that touched him deeply. Not because it was identical to his own, but because of the glaring differences between them. "You know, many people think my journey was easy because I'm the son of an NBA player," Curry commented after Marcus finished his account. "And it's true that I had privileges that many boys don't have. I never had to worry about the next pair of sneakers, or if there would be food on the table." Marcus nodded, appreciating the honesty. "But that doesn't mean I didn't face my own challenges," continued Curry. "I was always Dell's son, always too small, too skinny. Nobody believed I had what it took to get where I am." "How did you deal with that?" asked Marcus, genuinely curious. "I turned their doubts into fuel," answered Curry, his eyes shining with intensity. "Every no I heard became a motivation to prove them wrong. But most important," he paused, making sure Marcus was really paying attention. "Most important was never letting others' opinions define who I was or what I was capable of." Those words resonated deeply with Marcus. Throughout his life, he had been defined by external limitations: where he lived, how much money his family had, which school he attended. Hearing his idol talk about transcending others' expectations was like receiving permission to dream beyond what seemed possible. "You have a special gift, Marcus," continued Curry. "I can see that clearly. But talent alone isn't enough. Hard work," Marcus Tavares completed, quoting a phrase he had heard Curry say in interviews. "Exactly. And not just on the court," Curry smiled, satisfied with the response. "How are your grades in school?" The question caught Marcus by surprise. Good, I guess. I have A's and B's in most subjects." "Keep it that way. Education is non-negotiable," Curry spoke seriously. "Basketball can open doors, but education ensures you have something solid to build your life on, regardless of what happens with your sports career." They talked for almost 40 minutes. Curry shared advice about technique, discipline, and how to handle pressure. He talked about the importance of family, staying true to one's values, and never forgetting where you came from. Marcus absorbed every word like a sponge, asking occasional questions that impressed Curry with their maturity. When the assistant finally signaled it was time to go, Curry stood up, but not before making a proposal that left Marcus literally breathless. "How about watching the Warriors practice tomorrow morning? We have a closed session at 9. You can bring your friend and your coach if you want." Marcus looked at Curry as if he had just offered the key to paradise. "Seriously? That would be... I don't even know what to say." "Say yes," Curry laughed, extending his hand for a handshake. "Yes, 1,000 times yes." Curry nodded, satisfied, and then added as if it were just a detail. "Oh, and one more thing. I'm looking for a location for my next community basketball clinic on the East Coast. How's that court of yours in the Bronx? Millbrook, right?" Marcus could hardly believe what he was hearing. "It's, well, kind of run down. The backboards are broken, the floor has cracks, and the nets, well, we haven't had nets for years." "Sounds like the perfect place to start," Curry smiled. "I'll ask my foundation to get in touch with local authorities. Maybe we can give the place a makeover." When he returned to the locker room, where Rob and Jamal were anxiously waiting, Marcus seemed to be floating a few inches off the ground. His hands were still shaking when he told them about the conversation and Curry's invitations. "I knew you would impress him," Rob said, squeezing Marcus's shoulder with pride. "But a visit to the Warriors practice? That's something entirely new." The next morning, the trio was taken to the Golden State Warriors training center in Oakland. Walking past security guards, through corridors decorated with photos of team legends, was a surreal experience. When they reached the main court, Marcus had to pinch himself to make sure he wasn't dreaming. There they were, the players he only saw on TV, now just feet away, warming up, shooting, talking among themselves. And at the center of it all, Steph Curry, who upon seeing them enter, waved and came toward them. "Welcome," he greeted, quickly introducing them to some players and coaching staff members. "Find a comfortable spot on the sidelines. Practice starts in 5 minutes." For the next 2 hours, Marcus observed with almost religious attention every detail of the professional training. The intensity, the precision, the communication between players, the attention to the smallest technical details. Occasionally, Curry would approach to explain a specific exercise or strategy. At the end of practice, to Marcus's surprise, Curry called him onto the court. "How about showing some of your talent to the guys?" he challenged with a cheeky smile. Under the curious gazes of professional NBA players, Marcus swallowed his nervousness and took the ball offered by Curry. The next 10 minutes would be forever etched in his memory, shooting alongside his idol, receiving direct tips about his elbow positioning, dribbling rhythm, jump mechanics. "The kid has a future," commented one of the team veterans, genuinely impressed with Marcus's shooting accuracy. When it was finally time to leave, Curry gave Marcus an autographed ball and a bag, with some Warriors items. "Keep in touch, okay?" he said, writing down his personal email on a card. "I want to know how you progress." The return to New York the following day was very different from the trip there. Marcus was no longer the same insecure boy. Something fundamental had changed within him. It wasn't just the confidence of having met his idol, but a deeper understanding of what it truly meant to pursue a dream. 3 weeks after returning from the tournament, where Marcus's team reached the semifinals before being eliminated, Rob Collins received a phone call that left him speechless. The Steph Curry Foundation was really going ahead with the renovation of the Millbrook House's court. The project would not be limited to simple maintenance. It would include a complete renovation, new flooring, professional backboards, lighting, small bleachers, and even a small multi-purpose room that would serve as a space for academic tutoring after practice. When the news spread through the neighborhood, Marcus instantly became a local celebrity. The shy boy who used to be ignored by older players was now stopped on the street to tell his story. On the day of the renovated court's inauguration, 3 months later, a crowd gathered in what was once just another deteriorated space in the housing complex. Colorful banners decorated the venue, and a small stage had been set up for the ceremony. To the initial disappointment of many, Steph Curry could not attend in person due to NBA preseason commitments. However, to everyone's surprise, he appeared on a video call broadcast on a big screen, installed especially for the event. "I'm sorry I can't be there in person," Curry said on the screen, while the crowd applauded enthusiastically. "But I'm very happy to see this court coming to new life. Places like this are where some of basketball's greatest talents were born." The camera then focused on Marcus, who was on stage alongside his mother, Rob, and representatives from the foundation. "Marcus, keep working hard and inspiring other kids to follow their dreams, no matter where they come from," continued Curry. "This court now bears your name too, Johnson Curry Court, because I believe that one day your name will be as well known as mine." Tanya Johnson couldn't hold back tears as she hugged her son. For her, who had spent years working double shifts to ensure Marcus had the basics, seeing her son not only recognized by his idol, but honored in that way, was the realization of a dream she barely dared to have. After cutting the inaugural ribbon, Marcus was the first to shoot on the new court. The ball slid smoothly through the brand-new net, drawing applause from the crowd. But for him, the most significant moment came afterward, when he saw small children from the neighborhood timidly entering the court, looking in wonder at the space that was now theirs. "Hey, do you want to play?" Marcus asked a group of boys who seemed to be between 8 and 10 years old. The boys looked surprised at the now famous Marcus Johnson speaking directly to them. "You will teach us?" asked the smallest of them, with eyes wide with excitement. Marcus smiled, remembering himself a few years earlier. A dreamer boy from the Bronx who just needed a chance. "Of course I will," he answered, passing the ball to the boy. "First lesson: never let anyone tell you that you can't do something." 2 years later, Marcus Johnson was a known name in the national youth basketball circuit. At 13 years old, he had already been featured in sports reports and was considered one of the most promising prospects of his generation. The Johnson Curry Court had become a vibrant community center, where dozens of children trained daily under the guidance of Marcus and volunteer coaches. Steph Curry kept his promise to stay in touch. Occasional phone calls, text messages, and rare but meaningful visits solidified a mentoring relationship that went beyond basketball. Curry not only advised Marcus on techniques and strategies, but also on how to handle growing media attention, pressure of expectations, and, most importantly, the responsibility of being a role model for other young people. On a particularly hot summer afternoon, while watching a new generation of children playing on the court that now bore his name, Marcus reflected on how his life had changed in such a short time. From invisible boy to a symbol of hope for an entire community. His cell phone vibrated with a message from Curry. A photo of the star wearing customized shoes with the initials MJ on the side. "To remind me where true talents come from. Keep shining, Bronx kid." Marcus smiled, putting the phone in his pocket as he prepared for another training session with the neighborhood children. His journey was just beginning, but he had already learned the most valuable lesson. Sometimes, all a dream needs to become reality is someone who stops everything to notice its potential.